is a type of crossing of category mistake if it describes to one type or of thing and persons. If indeed it ascribes to anything of. He further implies that being personal entails performing action and yet an action without a body. Whether he is right about the latter point is relevant to our discussion here. All that is important is that we recognize the also implicit admission that God 7 exists as present a proposition. Oh, but obviously unthinkable on the extent that type crossing express unthinkable proposition, therefore is the regard the non-cognitive 7 as warranted, as I believe he does, then he is mistaken. Clearly, the proper stance to take here is instead at time 7. The next definition on the list is G8, the personally omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent, material, temporal creator and ruler of the universe is the concept of an temporal or timeless person. Current. That is hard to say, but certainly nothing like the ordinary concept of timelessness, as Nielsen pointed out. It's the only person that can be currently supposed to be performing actions. However, performing actions no less than causing effects cannot be viewed as occurring outside time without so stretching the definition of perform an action as they render those terms. Wholly vacuous beings, devoid of intelligible content. To perform an action is to have prior to performing it the intention to perform it, and then after performing it no longer have an intention, but have requires change, and change requires the passage of time to pausing an action that takes place, since times in therefore are absurd. So it makes no sense to say a temporal being has it performs action, performing actions being every bit as never performed action seems way fully nebulous. To be certain part of that it means to say X is a person or X is personal is that X is intention it has intentions and fulfills those intentions being purposed in character. However, as was just shown, a temporal beings cannot fulfill intentions since to do it requires exist within time, and a temporal beings by definition exists outside time. Therefore, there any sentence of the form X is a temporal person or X is a temporal X, and X is a temporal person should express a thinkable proposition if dubious at best. Besides, as it is already clear, that cause and effects require existence without time, and creating the universe involves causing an effect, since GA defines God as both a temporal and the creator of the universe. There can be no doubt that God exists, express the unthinkable, and so necessary false proposition. It follows that cognitive aims the incorrect view, and with all the previous definition of God is an atheist, then ought to be embraced. There is the conception of God which are less common that G1, G8 are no one less sufficiently prevalent that brief consideration of term is in order. Column G9 and G10, G9 God, a definition possible of term if undefinable, indefinable, G10 God, that being to which no positive properties can be ascribed. That God is undefinable as viewed and understood by mystics, and perhaps some New Agers as well. They claim that God can be recognized only by via mystical experiences, which are themselves verily inexpressible. That is, such experiences can be exhibited through behavior, but not intelligibly spoken about. It is beyond current, it is beyond coherent. Or put another way, does God 9 exist, express a proposition? For first of all, it can be taken to express the necessary false proposition. For first of all, it can be to express the proposition that there exists something which we call God. The term for which cannot be defined, but every term can be defined at least tentatively or stipulatively. The notion of a totally indefinable term is therefore incoherent. I regard nine such surely even the mystic would agree that terms will stipulatively define as those presence it is felt during a mystical experience, and furthermore, that mystical experience could be stipulative, defining as that kind of experience during which one experience, such a sensation or a perhaps such propositions. Given such a stipulative definition, if will be an open question where God 9 exists, expressing a true proposition, but that it will express a proposition is clear. Now consider G10 is this definition of God that is sometimes employed by theists of the philosophical bent. They say that God cannot be understood impossible descriptively. Terms and so can be accurately described only of the use negation of negations, e.g., God is not red, God is not small, etc. I am not entirely sure what to make of this view of God. My inclination, however, is to take God can exist to express necessary false proposition as inasmuch as there exists something to which not positive properties can be described, expresses an unthinkable proposition. There are several reasons for that. First of all, to entails what is not the case of if God acts, then God always acts in accord with the laws of logic, since to always act in accordance with the laws of logic, it's to have a positive property, but that X should act and yet fail to act in accord with the laws of logic is unthinkable. The theist will advocate G10 could be simply object that God never acts, but then when houses an account of what sort of thing never acts, incidentally he must also explain what sort of thing never thinks, has emotion, etc., must also explain what sort of thing never thinks, must also explain what certain other things has emotion, etc. Second, there seems no reason to exclude all relational properties from the class of positive properties, and yet this is not the case that God is less powerful than you humans, which entails that God has the presumably positive and therefore forbidden property of being at least as powerful as human, expressed a proposition that which surely even theists who employ G10 will assent. If indeed the world then good time exists, will entail a contradiction, and so will be unthinkable, hence necessary false. Third and finally, it's impossible to conceive something the description of which is wholly devoid of positivity ascription. For instance, Suppose to suppose you are asked to imagine a box that is not a square, and it's not tall and it's not made of cardboard, etc. How can you imagine such a box if you're only told what it your mind is, but in not a blank state? What is here? You are thus merely following yourself and think you have proved the proposition that the given box exists. One cannot imagine a bunch of it's not. It's installation of the some is. Isolation of the some is. We have not examined all 10 definitions of displayed above. Perhaps there are other common definitions of the terms that could be dealt with analogies, but I am not aware of any. At any rate, G1, G12, G10 are certainly a definition that are most often employed by both philosophers and lay people, and must include therefore that if there is any version of non-cognitivists that is true, then I has relevance only the most esoteric forms of God talk. The question arises what the extra-theological significance of anything follows from the conclusion. I would say that much does, in particular, send an implication for the philosophy of language. One important such implication is that no inquiry theory of sententially cognitivity can take the cognitive meaningless of S to consist in S failure to